So, aloha, Alton with Reap Insurance Group. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this recording with me because, I always have a lot of questions, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to ask my questions and get your answers and honestly share it with other people. So, thank you so much for being here today.
Phyllis, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know the heart that you have for people. So it was my pleasure to just provide whatever resources I can for you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alton. So one question I have, so I know you started your own business, Reap Insurance Group, but what actually made you decide to get into this field?
It was through personal trials and tribulations that I've had concerning my own parents and their financial situations. Anybody that knows me will understand the catalyst was my father initially becoming very ill. And this happened when I was a sophomore in college. And so as a very young person, barely being able to make it myself, I became responsible, a custodian for an adult suffering from some long-term illnesses and having to make or trying to make the right decisions for their healthcare. And unfortunately, I was provided with some very poor guidance and information, not knowing anything at that point, that put us in an even, in my opinion, worse situation. And so after I graduated from college after a few years and was introduced to the financial services industry, a light went off. And all of a sudden I said, wow, you may have done your father a disservice, not through any fault of your own necessarily, but just because you didn't know.
Right.
And so after that became my mission then is to make sure that other families, as best as I can, are not put in the same situation financially, emotionally, spiritually that we were put into, so that they can just achieve the goals that they have and just as much as they can live the life that they've envisioned. That's really my mission.
Thank you. That's honestly, that speaks a lot about your heart. Because you try to make the best decisions that you can, and you hope to never be in that position, but sometimes you find yourself in that position, One question that I had was, what is the biggest misconception that you've encountered about long-term care?
Okay. That's very broad, but probably the biggest misconception that people have about long-term care or long-term care coverages or things of that nature is they only cover you if you are confined to a facility. Years ago, very long time ago, in its initial stages, that was true. Many of the coverages that people bought were classified as nursing home coverage. That's what it was classified as. So really, even within the name, it tells you, unless you're confined to a facility, you don't have coverage. Well, as the years have gone by and things have developed, one, from a healthcare perspective, we all know mentally and physically, the longer you can stay at home and as independent as possible and surrounded by your loved ones, the better overall your healthcare outcomes will be. I don't care how expensive or how good the facility is. The best place for you to be is at home if you can be there safely, without risking your health anymore, and also without putting your family at additional risk as well, so to speak.
Right.
So the new policies and the new things that are available to people cover you in a couple of different areas. So not only if you are confined to an actual nursing facility full time, you're covered there. You're covered if you're in an assisted living facility, a facility in which maybe you have a little bit more independence, but you just need a little bit of help with a few things. It covers you at home, and it covers you as well for something that is now developing in the industry called adult daycare. So say, for instance, someone like my mother who suffered from dementia, but otherwise she was mobile, ambulatory, she could get around, she could feed herself, she could clothe herself, she could go to the bathroom and things of that nature. But if she were staying at home with me having to work every day, I could take her to what we classify as an adult daycare. They
Okay.
would watch her for the day during those business hours, and then afterwards, just like you would with your with other dependents that you may have, young dependents, then you go back in the afternoon or evening and you pick her up and bring her home, and she's actually able to stay with the family. So that's a new thing that is developed in the industry as well. Again, the new types of policies and things that we're talking about, those coverages do cover those types, all of those areas, as opposed to just nursing home.
That's awesome. How you mentioned about adult daycare, I'm sure that that helps out a lot of people who want to keep their parents with them in their home instead of putting them in a facility. At least they can still work, and kind of like with your child dropping it off at them off at daycare, you could do that with your parent. So that is awesome to have, like coverage that does that as well. I have a personal question for you. So my
Yes.
mother has Medicare, and I wanted to know, is she covered with long-term care? Right now she lives with me. I have no intention of putting her in long-term care facility. However, I just want to make sure that that there's an option in the event I need it.
And I'm going to keep this very general,
Yes, sir.
but in most instances, it's very limited coverage,
Okay.
very limited. So first, before I answer that question, let me define for you what is considered in our industry, considered eligibility, what qualifies you for what we call long-term care. All right. So if we look at the healthcare industry, most health insurance is built upon what we call rehabilitative. It's rehabilitative. It has a rehabilitative foundation. So it's designed for you to have an illness, injury, or something of that nature. And then the doctor prescribes all of these different services for you, whether it be surgery, rehabilitation, medication, whatever the case may be. But those things are designed to eventually get you back to where you were previously or near where you were previously. It's rehabilitative.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, what happens is as soon as you go into the other area, which we call custodial care, as soon as it goes into custodial care, your health insurance is no longer obligated to pay for your expenses. Now, custodial care is different. So if you have an injury or illness and it's severe enough that you don't get back to where you were previously as far as your health level, when you need assistance in any two of the following areas, what we call the activities of daily living, if you can't feed yourself without significant assistance, if you can't clothe yourself, bathe yourself, if you can't transition from a bed to a chair safely, if you're incontinent, you don't have the ability to know when you need to go to the restroom, or you have cognitive impairment. If you have any two of those things in combination, you're considered to be in a long-term care situation, and that's considered to be more custodial, meaning we're just trying to maintain you on a daily basis with the necessities that anybody that's living on a daily basis should be able to do. Your medical insurance, whether it be Medicare or anything else, normally will not cover you in that particular situation. It will only cover the medical services that are provided, not the assistance with the activities of daily living. And that's where most individuals have difficulty, because when your mother or someone else's loved one becomes in a situation where they do need significant assistance with those things, your health insurance won't pay for that. Your health insurance will pay for your doctors, your surgeries, your medical visits. They will not pay for custodial care. That's where long-term care planning, long-term care insurance, or some type of strategy comes into play to assist you with those activities of daily living. Now, to go back to your question relative to Medicare, Medicare will cover you under certain guidelines for normally up to about 100 days of custodial care.
Okay.
In that, first of all, there is a transition normally from a hospital directly to the facility, in which you have to be in the hospital for at least 3 days, and then transition to a skilled nursing or rehabilitative facility. At that particular point, you have in total about 20 days that Medicare will cover your stay. All right.
Okay.
Once you get beyond those 20 days, the 21st day to the 100th day, you're going to be responsible for some type of coinsurance, daily coinsurance. Okay. To give you an example, that might be, and you would have to specifically look at the Medicare guidelines for that year, but it might be $141 per day for those days 21 through 100. After that 100th day, there still might be a few days remaining of coverage, but for the most part, that's it. Within that time frame, though, that 21 to 100 days, your mother or your loved one would have to be in a situation where they're continuing to improve, because remember, your health insurance, whether it be Medicare or anything else, is rehabilitative.
Right.
So if you're going through your physical therapies, your speech therapies, all of those different things, and you're continuing to show improvement, Medicare will continue to pay.
Okay.
The moment that one of those professionals basically says, we can't do anything else for you, that might be day 70. Might be day 75, that might be day 60. We really can't do anything else for you, and we don't see any improvement within there long enough. Medicare is no longer obligated to pay. And at that particular point, you need to have something else in place, or some other type of assistance, strategy, program, assets, whatever it is available for you to take care of those custodial arrangements.
Thank you for that. Honestly, that's really eye-opening, because I know that even in my situation with my mother, I'm not even sure if we have that. So that's something that I'm going to have to look into with her to make sure that we're good to go. Because you just never know. You never know. And especially after this past year, we know that we don't know what the future holds. So
absolutely. Now there is, and I will add a little bit of caveat, now there are programs that might be available for certain individuals through the state, such as Medicaid, that might be available. And Medicaid, let me tell you, is not one thing. It's several, and I'll just use this, even though it's 50 plus community-based programs that make up Medicaid. So it's not just one thing, but depending upon your financial situation, your health situation, where you're trying to obtain your coverage, there may be several programs that a person may qualify for based upon their financial situation, health situation, and other things that they could qualify for that may assist them from a state level. But just remember, anytime you're dealing with the government, it's more regulated.
right.
There's specific guidelines that have to be met from an income, asset, and condition standpoint for you to receive the most benefit in those services. And most of the time, I will tell you, spending your assets down to nothing for a lot of individuals that have worked hard in their life and have some things saved up is not the goal. I don't want to do that. And that's ultimately what was told to me when I wasn't guided to just seek some additional help. But the state told me, you got to spend down all of his assets, and then we might be able to help you out. With my father. And that's what we ended up doing, was spending down a significant portion of his assets before he could qualify, not really realizing that would, being that young for me, make him a ward of the state.
Right.
Poor and indigent. And technically, by definition, you have to be poor or indigent, or indigent for you to qualify for Medicaid in the state of Florida.
Okay.
So that's not the goal. That's why we do the planning ahead of time, so that we can preserve assets as much as we possibly can, while still allowing a person to qualify for things that they rightfully should qualify for, the assistance that they need, in the absence of having other things in place that may help them.
Thank you. Honestly, speaking of the government, I have another question for you. In our area, we have a lot of disabled veterans, myself being one of them. So if they receive care from the VA, is there a long-term care type of coverage for them?
Okay, so again, that's another broad question. I'll try to make it as simple as possible without being too long-winded. So what happens in those types of situations, especially someone like you that has retired from the military, not just one or two, enlistments, but you
Right.
actually retired from the military, you have certain programs that are available for you, depending on whether that be, Champ VA, whether that be at certain ages, TRICARE for life. All
Mm-hmm.
of those different things are available for you and your qualified dependents. Um, in a situation like that, you also have other benefits through the VA that might be available for you. So they have VA long-term care facilities where a person might be able to get into that would assist them with their long-term care services. The only problem with that is, obviously the VA is underneath a lot of strain. We have a lot of veterans, and not everyone would necessarily qualify at the time that they may need it. Because what happens is, first of all, there's a long waiting list. And we know when
True.
there's a long waiting list, you don't know where you are on the waiting list.
Right.
Within the VA system, if you are at a certain place and another individual who is in a more dire situation
Mm-hmm.
also is added to the list, you may be jumped when it's time for when a position is available. If one ever becomes available, you may
Right.
be jumped in that particular hierarchy because it's also based upon need, not just the fact that you qualify as a veteran and that you need some type of assistance. But if you have a fellow veteran that is in more dire straits than you are, they could legally jump you within the list. So there's really no determination on when and where a facility is going to be available for you. So it's more constricting and more constraining from that standpoint, even though that is a benefit that might be available to you. On the insurance side, just as Medicare doesn't pay for custodial care,
Mm-hmm.
those specific VA benefits such as TRICARE, Champ VA, things like that, they don't pay for custodial care either. But like I said, within the VA system, there are some benefits available to you, but it's really whether you qualify for them at that particular time and whether you have access to those at the time that you actually need it.
Makes sense, honestly. It does. So thank you for that. And my last question I have for you is, can you share one story of a client that you've helped that makes you like what you do feel so rewarding?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is really what it all comes down to. Besides my own personal story, when I looked at the struggles that I had with my father and not knowing what I know now, and the resources that are available and what people need to be in your corner to help you through this, how difficult it was. It was like a fire sale, like the house is on fire when my father became ill.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, fortunately, even though she still was in an assisted living facility because of her dementia and the fact that, we were working, she still was much later in age when I entered the industry. So it still was a situation where her health had deteriorated enough and there weren't enough assets that I wasn't able to do my full magical routine with her. But the planning we did put in place for her prior to her becoming more critically ill, and the things that we did and rearranged things and the things that we did, the planning for her made the transition for her and for us, actually, the family, a whole lot easier. When I say it was like night and day, anything that you can do is better than nothing
So true.
at that particular point. So even though she didn't qualify from a health insurance standpoint for some things, we were able to still put the correct documents in place. We knew what her desires were. We had already studied and picked out maybe some facilities in the area that we were looking at. So it wasn't the house is on fire type of situation. It was more, okay, now we're here. Let's go ahead and start executing on the things that we've put in place to help her out. And then even in that, laws change, things change. So, but you make slight adjustments. But when I tell you the stress level and the uncertainty was much less prevalent with her transition to an assisted living facility than my father's transition initially. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I have several, besides my own personal, and what I like to tell clients is I'm not telling you what I think. I'm not telling you what I've read in a book. I'm not telling you what others have been through. I can tell you personally what I've been through,
Mm-hmm.
why this is so important. But I did have a client who had actually done very well for themselves. They had done some pre-planning ahead of time. They were already in retirement, but they were thinking about what if this happens? What if that happens? And they were referred to me through one of the groups that you and I work with closely. Well, after doing a complete needs analysis for them, and really that is just finding out where you are at this point, what you have available relative to what goal we're trying to accomplish. We had suggested that they apply for long-term care insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Long-term care insurance, unfortunately, long-term care insurance has unfortunately become more and more difficult to qualify for than it might have been previously. So what ended up happening is she and her husband did not qualify for the long-term care insurance coverage, the actual insurance coverage. So we went to our next level of planning, which was basically, let's take a look at the assets that you have, where they are positioned, and then where you would, what we might be able to do to reposition those assets if necessary in order to provide you for a long-term care, have some type of long-term care benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the end, what ended up happening was she had way too much money to ever probably qualify for Medicaid or anything of that nature. But she did have some assets and things that they had set aside. And basically, in a nutshell, they had set aside about $200,000 of their own personal savings to say, this is what, if something goes wrong for mom and dad, this is the money that we want the family to use to pay for long-term care.
Mm-hmm.
What they found out is in the state of Florida, the average long-term care facility, if you're paying for it on your own, is going to cost you anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 per year.
Wow.
If you have both parents in that type of situation, that $200,000, as great as that foundation would be, would probably be disposed of in about 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? About 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
So what we actually ended up doing in that situation was taking those $200,000 that they've already set aside.
Mm-hmm.
We put it into another type of asset-based product that has long-term care associated with it. That when it's time, they've taken that $200,000 and what that could do for them.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually able to leverage it, and we're going to be able to get $300,000 to $400,000 out of those same assets.
Wow.
to help them with their long-term care services. Well, as things normally happen, and in my business, if you're around long enough,
Mm-hmm.
eventually the plans that you've put in place, you're going to have clients that are going to have to implement them. And the husband was put into a long-term care situation. We were able to take a portion of that money, turn on that income stream, and activate those benefits for him. And now he is at home receiving the care that he needs around his family. They ended up moving closer to family members in the same neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They continue to interact with those individuals. They have a healthcare provider that comes in a few times a week to help her out with a few things regarding him. And the family is just absolutely in a great position. And the great thing about it, didn't have to go to a facility, did not have to use any additional income or expenses, assets from the money that they had set aside to be able to do this. They're still going to be able to leave a legacy to their family, which was a huge goal of theirs. But they have this address now, and just to at least see him be able to see these plans come to fruition and how much they're thriving with the work that I've done is just an absolute joy for me. I can't tell you, just as they are happy with what we're doing, that's the satisfaction I receive at night when I lay down and put my head down on a pillow, that I know that is one family that I was definitely able to help. Now, again, I'm here to help anyone. So it doesn't matter if you have few dollars or no money at all, to the fact of whether you are at this point independently wealthy, as long as it's a perfect world and nothing happens, it really doesn't matter. I'm here, just want to be a resource, because again, that's my mission. My mission is just to make sure that other families don't have the stress, strain, concern, the financial, spiritual, and physical burden that I had placed on me in the absence of planning, when we can avoid that to some degree with just a little bit of time spent early on in the situation or earlier in the situation.
Right. Thank you so much, Alton, because, that shows where your heart where your heart is at. It speaks volumes about you as a person. As somebody who has lost a parent, and kind of gone through, I didn't go through a long period of time where, we had to take care of him. Unfortunately, he passed rather quickly, but things weren't put in order, and trying to figure everything out. And like you said, it's like the house is on fire and you're trying to do all this stuff. Making sure, after going through that with my father, I don't want to have that for my children, and I don't want them to ever experience that. And my mother doesn't want that for me. So she's been doing her planning and stuff like that. So I just, we've talked about that before, and just spreading that word and making sure people understand, because unfortunately you don't realize it until you're in the midst of it. And, just getting some information out there to share with people is great. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I look forward to chatting with you more about different things, because I know you have a wealth of knowledge on different subjects. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate
Phyllis, thank you very much what you're doing. First of all, as I always tell you, thank you for you and your husband, as well as your father. Thank you for your service to our country and the sacrifices that you all have made to just allow us to live in the freedom that was provided for us originally. I mean, I don't think there's enough that we could do as a government and as a community for our veterans. I don't think there's enough that we could do. So first, let me thank you for that. But then also too, again, you talked about my heart, but really your heart is the catalyst for everything that we're doing. You have a heart to help people, and especially our veterans and those families of veterans that need that additional support and encouragement. It's not always, and it never has been easy, but like I said, I certainly do appreciate it, and it does not fall on deaf ears, the sacrifices that you all make, and the fact that you have dedicated your life as well, a part of your life, to just helping your fellow veterans, I think is absolutely commendable. And any way that I can be involved in that and support you, I always will. So thank you, my friend, for just being the spirit that you are, and having the spirit that you have and the heart that you have to help others.
And thank you to my friend. So you have a great day. Thanks again. And I cannot wait to share this with everybody. So
wonderful. Thank you very much.